And what's up? What's up? It is GC Live. I am Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark, rolling right along on a Tuesday afternoon, getting you ready a little bit for Gamecocks versus Georgia. And of course, our daily sort of trends and vibes and thoughts and information on South Carolina's ongoing coaching search, which hopefully you've all been following on GamecockCentral.com. And of course, right here on the GC Live show as well. We are brought to you by Affordable Medical. Check them out at affordablemedicalusa.com, 803-926-1493. And they are home of the Game Day Chair. Chris Clark, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? We're rolling in here, coming in hot today, right on the 2 o'clock mark, or a little bit after. But we've been busy.
Yes.
Busy day already.
Yes, busy couple of weeks. Sort of. I mean, it's Georgia. It is Georgia week. It is Thanksgiving. But it just feels like the consciousness of Gamecock Nation is on the future. You know, maybe some Luke Doty thoughts there as well, but I think that's partially because that really involves the future of the program as well, and maybe the future of the quarterback position here at South Carolina. Of course, Mike Bobo speaking today, some players speaking today. I think you've sort of seen, man, in a very short period of time, Bobo has sort of tried to put his stamp on the program with little changes. And one small change that I think is very noticeable is that he's trusted Luke Doty, a true freshman, to talk to the media now. That's twice since Saturday, which is, I believe, 2 times more than any freshman spoke for the entire Muschamp era, maybe.
Yeah, I didn't see it a lot. And so, and there have been a few little things that he's done, whether it's just changing up the practice schedule or letting freshmen speak. What was the other? Oh, the other one was, an updated depth chart, which really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really mean a lot, but it's something else that people took note of, whether fans or media. And so, yeah, Bobo's definitely tried to just, an interim coach, you never really are quite sure how they're going to handle it. Are they going to just sort of continue what's been being done? In some ways, they've done that. Some ways you're going to be limited, completely overhauling personnel at certain spots. For instance, it's not something we really expected Mike Bobo to do, because South Carolina is A, limited in some spots, and B, limited by the fact that they're low on numbers. And he went over some of that today. They were already low on numbers going into the Missouri game, and now they're going to be down even more guys, it appears. At least some that are out, some that are doubtful, some that are questionable. And so the things that he could do, just, maybe put some of his own personality in, do some things like let Luke Doty talk or whatever freshman. Obviously, people want to hear from Luke Doty just in general, but given that he got to play last week in the second half, and given that he's got a really good shot to start against Georgia, which Bobo said they've internally made that decision, not going to announce it. Those are the types of things. And Bobo's been really candid. He's been candid about injuries. He's been candid just about what he thinks of the team in the future and just a lot of different situations. And so I think people haven't expected that much the rest of this year as far as wins, as far as the scoreboard. But I think those things, given the circumstances, people, I guess, appreciate is maybe the best word I can think of it.
Yeah, man. And I tell you, I think here's my thoughts on Mike Bobo so far. Obviously, let's be diplomatic. He's not on our hot board as far as being the next head football coach. And, I think that's primarily, Chris, because of he's fresh off of what happened at Colorado State, right? And with what happened at Florida with Muschamp and sort of hiring a guy who it didn't work out, then turning around and doing the same in this instance, really, honestly, no matter what happens, the final 2 games, it was going to be really hard for Bobo to ever be a true candidate for this job.
Yep.
But I will say, as far as what he has done internally in his short time with the program. I do appreciate sort of the effort, the energy of trying to switch things up and flip things around a little bit, different practice structure. I've heard there's even been some changes internally about the players and cleaning up for themselves a little bit more within the football facility, and just sort of those things where a lot of small things add up to big things potentially. So I know Bobo's not really, it seems, in the running for the head job, but I do appreciate his efforts. I think as interim coach, he's tried to push all the buttons to try and get this team past the finish line. The move to put Connor Shaw on the field, I think, while maybe obvious, was also a really sharp, smart move. And even Luke Doty today talking about how valuable it's been. I wondered, was the Connor Shaw element just for Luke in particular? I was like, all right, is this overblown, or is this really a big deal for him to have Connor down there on the sideline? The more I've picked up and the more Luke has been able to speak publicly now, I think it's been very important for Luke to have Connor, who Luke said, I think 2 different times, he's like, hey, this guy has a playing style, or had a playing style very similar to mine. So just for Doty's growth, getting some playing time, I think it's been a really sharp move to get Connor on the field, even though Connor was already involved in the quarterback room. To take it a step farther, I think it has been nice. And I think it's worth taking time to appreciate Bobo at least having some different ideas, as opposed to just being like, well, the season's over, I'm probably not getting the job, nobody's winning a championship, let's just go through the motions and let's end this thing. He's brought some energy, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the little changes, that he's made, and I think he made one last week that a lot of people wanted to see, and that was, inserting Luke Doty into the game. And I think there were probably a few things that went into it. One being, obviously there was just a spark needed, but secondly, I mean, when Shi Smith went down, that takes away your most dynamic playmaker other than Kevin Harris on this team. And so you needed to find a way to get another dose of athleticism and playmaking in there. And Luke Doty was that. And so obviously we saw, flashes of what he could do. Is Missouri an outstanding defensive team? No, they're not. And, they're shorthanded a little bit on both sides of the ball too on Saturday, which is why we didn't always see clean football, played on Saturday night. So, but yeah, I mean, I think there did seem to be, to me, this is just my observation. It didn't result in a win, obviously, but, there was more, I think, energy on the sideline on Saturday, whether it was some of the changes. Mike Bobo himself, I thought, brought some positive energy, to the sideline. I spent a lot of time sort of observing him and his movements and what he was doing, how he was interacting with the players on Saturday. And it was a little different. And so that's something that I think we both use the same word, Wes. I think you can come to appreciate, because they do still have to finish out this year. I mean, the guys that are out there, they're trying. Things don't look outstanding right now in terms of, the prognosis for the rest of this year, but they're out there giving it a run. Things have not gone well this year. They're banged up. They got guys missing. It's not a good situation right now, but internally they seem to, have resolved to try to just fight it out. And some of the little changes he made, I think, have been positive for this group, just as far as morale and everything.
Yeah. And Chris, so to sort of put it right there, I think so. There's more than one way to push a football team and coach a football team. We all know that, but I think Muschamp and the defensive staff and those guys, they're hard on their guys. They expect a lot. This is not a staff that is known for, I don't think, known for coddling players. I think they're known for pushing players. And I did think it was interesting that Bobo, basically, he said this in post-game Saturday. He said, I told the whole staff everything we were going to say is going to be positive. So, there's a time for positive reinforcement. There's a time for getting on somebody. And from that statement and just what you see and hear, it sounds like the approach has been, look, these guys have been through enough. It's been a long year. That's something you keep hearing that phrase a lot. It's been a long year. All the protocols, not knowing if you're going to get to play, losing, then Muschamps out. It has been tough on some of these kids, I'm sure. But I think you look and to just say that's called reading the room and realizing these guys have been beat down enough with everything that's happened. Let's go positive reinforcement all the way, the rest of the way, because there's enough adversity already than to worry about coach being mad at me or being in the doghouse, basically. So, again, I can appreciate all that. I tell you, as far as, again, adversity, it seems like every year, by the end of the year, South Carolina's dealing with injuries. Now, Chris, for me, it sort of feels like just across the country, it seems like everybody between COVID, contact tracing, and then true traditional injuries, it feels to me like every team is missing guys and is banged up and is out. So injury update today, Shi Smith, doubtful for Saturday. Xavier Leggett out for Saturday. You have several defensive guys. Jordan Birch is questionable. Tonka Hemingway is questionable. Kiera Thomas is questionable. Jalen Foster, who spoke to the media, also questionable. That surprised me. Didn't actually realize he was hurt. But the approach has been, look, everybody's banged up. We all know that. But if you're in the building, if you want to be here, and if you're cleared medically, just go give it your best shot. And maybe even a little more emphasis on taking some pressure off and just having some fun and finishing off this season with your teammates, I feel like.
Yeah, that's exactly the approach. And, although things didn't go well on Saturday, like I said earlier, it looked like there was a little bit more energy. Obviously, South Carolina's narrowed it down personnel really just by process of elimination. Whether it's offensively or defensively, the personnel has been limited because of injuries. Mostly is where this team's at in terms of injuries. They've gotten down close to that mark, and who knows, maybe they got some guys that are out for other reasons, but that's sort of where it is right now. So, and that's what it's all about, is just trying to go out and finish the year as best as you can. Obviously, they are going to be – it's going to be a tough go, against this Georgia team that's extremely fast on defense. Offensively, we know they have a lot of talent. Maybe they figured out some things there offensively with JT Daniels playing quarterback. It's going to be a big challenge. You're already down Aaron Sterling, starting defensive lineman, who's a senior. And now you're in a situation where his replacement, Tonka Hemingway, is questionable. You'd think he'd at least be banged up. Brad Johnson is out, another guy who could play Sam or go play up front if they needed him to in that situation. You're thin at linebacker, thin in the secondary, losing 3 starters to opt out. So just not a great personnel situation. Can't afford, really any more injuries there just to be able to field, a team at certain spots. So they're going to have to just fight through all that. It's not ideal circumstances at all in these last 2 games of the season.
Yep. And again, I keep using the word appreciate, but I think if you are a fan out there, you should appreciate the guys that have stuck it out. And that's not even saying anything about the guys that haven't, but the kids that have sort of dug down and are going to go through the final few games with their teammates. I think it does bring a full new appreciation from the fan base, or at least it should for those guys. All right, let's maybe get into coaching search a little bit. Not a whole lot new there, and then we may circle back, depending on time, to questions and maybe a little bit to the Georgia game and a little bit about this Georgia team, which Chris is also apparently dealing with being banged up and injuries of their own, and also dealing with I don't know if I should say dealing with, but they also have had a coaching change, a quarterback change. I got coaching change on the brain. They've had a QB change last week that I think really affected their offense a little bit and their approach on offense. So a lot going on, but coaching search, I think you and I have been maybe working the phones. We're hoping to maybe have a new update on GamecockCentral.com here at some point today, maybe more like this evening. But one question I continue to see, Chris, is a win. Like, as in, when is it going to happen? And while other things have changed throughout the search already, the win seems to, I would say, Chris, be fairly solid as when they hope to be done. And it sort of just seems like they're on pace, they're on track to be able to knock this thing out in a timely manner.
Yeah, and what we've heard from the beginning is that South Carolina wanted to do something before the early signing period, which is December 16th, runs for 3 days, the 16th through the 18th, if possible. And so that sort of opens up a whole box of questions as to, is it possible? And then how much time do you need before the early signing period? That the season, if South Carolina gets these last 2 games in, ends on December 5th. We know the SEC's makeup date is later than that. And so that could, how would that affect things? We really don't know. But you got some candidates who are going to be playing games later, say December 12th, conference title game potential December 19th. So you've got some candidates out there that could still be playing. You got some that may be available earlier. You got the possibility of we've seen head coaching candidates remain with their teams for a time and sort of split duty, right, between their new team, they're putting together a staff, they're recruiting maybe, and then the team that they're already on. So it can make for some interesting dynamics. What we do know is the reasons for the decision of wanting, if possible, again, to get to that date. And right now they're on track, it seems like, to do it. It seems like things are progressing in a way to where they could, have things set and hit that target date where they have a little bit of a buffer, a little bit of time. And so the reason you want to do that, obviously, be able to assess your current recruiting class, see if you can get some guys signed early in December who you'd like to keep. Try to maybe hold off some other targets. Maybe a guy comes in that's got some connections, can get some guys to hold off until February. Lots of virtual stuff because, again, no in-person visits. And then just recruiting your own roster is the best way you can put it. With the transfer portal out there, with the possibility looming in January that some guys could leave free and clear at any program if the NCAA passes new legislation. It's just a way to stabilize your program just in general if you can get someone in early. And so you don't want to do that at the expense of getting a good candidate, a good new coach, obviously, but it does make a lot of sense as to why that would be the approach.
Yeah, and as we talked about, I think yesterday, Chris, it's a new world as far as coaching hires go. You have to have a new approach. The early signing period obviously plays in, but then COVID and the fact everything's over Zoom and all this stuff plays in as well. Transfer portal, as you said, that plays in as well. So not that you have to move fast, like you said, at the expense of making the right hire, but there is something to be said for not putting your new coach behind from the very beginning, as much as possible. So we'll see how that looks. Speaking of the recruiting class, a little bit more movement last night. All the nights run together. I think that was still last night. But Simeon Price decommitting from South Carolina. He's an athlete from Florida. One of these kids, and we warned people that there's going to be decommitments. We said anybody that's potentially a defensive back that may be an area where you look more strongly at as far as a possible decommitment. But I think defensive kids in general. Now, the first decommitment was Rodarius Thomas, a wide receiver. Now, he was also one of the most recent commitments as well. So not a guy that had been pledged for a long time, someone that had never visited, as far as an actual trip. So maybe someone that doesn't have the long-standing connection to South Carolina, like a Colton Gauthier, who has maintained that he's, firmly committed and sort of just hanging in there with all this. So Chris, would continue to anticipate some potential decommitments. I still think Trinilius Tatum is one to keep an eye on, the linebacker from Georgia. There are some other guys as well. You got George Wilson, who's a very highly thought of pass rusher. He was getting looks from other schools regardless. And I think anybody that's going to be pursued hard by other schools that have set coaching situations, you kind of have to keep an eye on. But Simeon Price, I mean, that's a kid that I think you and I both were intrigued by and liked. Really good athlete. Tested off the charts at some regional camps and combines. And, I think maybe hurts a little bit, but also as par for the course. It's expected that you're gonna take a haircut. You're gonna lose some guys if you have a coaching change.
Yeah, no doubt. And you're going to have some guys that change for a variety of reasons. And another thing that you're going to have is when the new coach comes in, we've seen this at South Carolina last time. We've seen it at multiple other programs. You're going to have a new coach come in and assess the recruiting class and make their own evaluations. There's going to be specific needs that they have in mind. They may look at one kid who's committed and say, we really like to go in another direction. They may look at another kid and say, this is a guy we'd really like to include. And then those conversations will be had. So now which ones, will go in that latter direction of, taking a look and evaluating, so to speak, the class. We don't know that yet. We've gotten a lot of questions about that, but it's just not one we can answer. We have to see, who the new coach is, when he's hired, sort of get feedback on all those different assessments. But you're going to have that two-way street of some guys that maybe choose to look around or just outright decommit like we've seen. We don't know. One question we've got, could South Carolina get back in on Rodarius Thomas? I don't know. We're just going to Rodarius Thomas, Simeon Price. It depends on a variety of factors. And so a lot of that is, just remains to be seen, and it'll have to shake out once the new staff is in place.
I've seen some questions come through, Chris. Some things we've kind of hit on these before, but maybe worth reiterating because I know information can change quick. And, we have turnover, we have changeover on who's actually on the show from day to day. But Hugh Freeze, we're being asked about him. That's not really somebody we've spent a whole lot of time talking about on our message board as of late. We moved him way down on our last hot board. Didn't quite take him off the hot board at that time. That was on last Friday, I think. But to give you an idea, I think we kicked it around, the idea of taking him off the hot board at that time. How, Chris, would you phrase the situation right now with Hugh Freeze? It just does not seem like there's a lot of traction. And it feels like there's maybe a sense from some people to phrase that as there's not a lot of traction on the Hugh Freeze side for South Carolina, whereas it sort of feels like it's kind of been the opposite to me.
Yeah, I think, now Hugh Freeze was a guy that was expected to come up if there was an opening. Obviously, the job did open, and people knew at that point that that the job was going to officially open. So that's the sort of legwork phase of everything. And Hugh Freeze was part of those very early sort of discussions around the job as to, what type of fit he'd be, what type of job he could do. And obviously the intrigue with him was just his offense, the job he does as a coach, him winning at Ole Miss, some of the signature wins that he got against Alabama, for example. And so there was some intrigue about that, but continuing to dive into it, that's why you go through the process. And Wes, this is what we've talked about, man. There've been some changes throughout this thing, from the first, iteration of maybe who was on the list, so to speak, to now. Some guys have been added, some guys have dropped off. I mean, it's just, there's been a lot of changes, which is expected with a coaching search. Happens most of the time. You don't see a ton of them that just, you get these names and those are the only names and nothing ever changes. A lot of times there's ebbs and flows to these things. This one's been no different. And so Freeze has been part of that ebb and flow to where it didn't take long. I mean, our first coaching search update, I believe on the Sunday night that Will Muschamp was dismissed, we said that, we didn't think Hugh Freeze was a likely guy to get the job. And that's only really been reinforced in the time period since this search began. And, there's a lot of different reasons that go into that. Hugh Freeze is interested in jumping back to the SEC at some point. from what I've heard, does he maybe prefer, a bigger like an Auburn or a Tennessee? Maybe. Yes, I have heard that. But also South Carolina, he's not been as high on the list here as maybe some people would just think, just looking at his resume. And there are a lot of different things that go into that. Certainly the track record at Ole Miss with some of the off-field stuff and how it would affect things here from a recruiting standpoint or perception, all those different things. That's definitely weighed into the considerations.
Well, according to one guy on Twitter last week, it's our fault that Freeze will not be here because
Good job, Wes.
Talked badly of him. You're guilty by association. I'm lumping you in as well. Dalton asks, if VT opens up, why wouldn't Beamer go back to VT? What makes South Carolina a more appealing job than Virginia Tech for Beamer specifically? I mean, that's for one, and I don't want to speak for Shane Beamer. I don't think he's on the chat right now. He may be. I don't know. But I don't want to speak for him. But following in your father's following your father's footsteps is tough when your father is a legend at a place like VT. The expectations would be insane. You're instantly going to be compared to your dad at all times as someone who honestly probably already is going to have to deal with those comparisons regardless of where they're at. So why sort of fuel those flames? But I think, it's cliche when a coach says dream job, because coaches use that in recruiting. They use that when they get a new job, opening press conference. This is my dream job until my next dream job comes open, basically. But with that said, I think being the head coach at the University of South Carolina, due to the ties here, the time here before, I think Beamer and his family enjoyed being in Columbia. He's born in Charleston. This is a special state to the Beamers, and I didn't realize apparently his. I was reading an article, an Oklahoma article about Beamer, and it was talking about his sister, and I don't remember when the article was from, but they apparently live in Greenville. So the ties to the state, obviously there are ties to VT as well. But to me, it's not really that far-fetched that he would want to be the guy at this SEC job as opposed to go to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. I mean, so Beamer sort of carved out his own path too in his career. He did coach for his dad at one point for a few years at Virginia Tech, but it was a little later, and so he's made a lot of different moves, not that were necessarily box checkers on a resume, like taking a small school OC job just for the heck of being an OC and sort of checking that resume box, but, going around and working for some different head coaches, whether it was, as a GA, Philip Fulmer, and then Sylvester Croom at Mississippi State, George O'Leary, Steve Spurrier, Kirby Smart, Lincoln Riley now. And coaching in all phases of the game. So in a lot of ways, it was just about a more well-rounded approach just in general, as opposed to just, hanging out with his dad at Virginia Tech for 15 or 20 years or whatever it may have been, and then looking to, take over there. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, Kyle Whittingham is a guy that's been at Utah forever. He's been there for a while as a head coach, and he started there. I think he either started there with his dad or his dad took over for somebody else. But the point is, he coached under his dad at Utah. And we've seen that several people, brothers coaching together, sons, fathers. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I think he just made a point to maybe distinguish himself, that he's not Frank Beamer's son. He's Shane Beamer also. And so, but yeah, I think there's a lot, you mentioned the family ties, the prior experience here. This is a good job here at South Carolina, and it's a place that they always liked. And so it's not far-fetched at all. In fact, we are of the belief, I think, Wes, are on the same page with this, that this might even be the preferred, situation in that instance for Shane Beamer.
Yeah, I think reading between the lines that is safe to say. It appears. So we'll see. All right, still some lingering Jeff Monken talk, I think, among the fan base, and it has permeated our chat. Still a little bit of Monken talk on Twitter. I think we're going to maybe readdress this as well on GamecockCentral.com, potentially in our report later on today. But worth pointing out, and it seems the Flames maybe have, Toby asking, what about the guy from Army with a throwing up emoji? So I think if anybody's still worried about that, Chris, we can probably put their worries away.
Yeah, so we've had a couple updates during the process so far, and they were both, look, Jeff Monken was obviously hired by Bob Caslin when he was the superintendent at West Point, now the U.S., obviously South Carolina president. And what's up, Mike? Good point. And so there is that prior connection there, right? And obviously Caslin thinks very highly of Jeff Monken, who's a really good coach and has done an outstanding job at Army. And did a good job before that at Georgia Southern. But, there's just what we've heard consistently is that it's not happening. It's a situation where expect to hear his name because there's a connection. You may talk to him, may interview him even. Well, I don't know if that's happened for sure, but that he wasn't expected to be the hire. And so I know Twitter and blew up a little bit yesterday. We got a lot of questions about it, but really nothing's changed on that front to where Jeff Monken's more of a candidate than he was at the beginning of the process. Now he has pitched. He was involved for the Missouri job last year. Apparently he has pitched transitioning to a pro-style offense, hiring an OC and going pro-style. He's been an option coach as an assistant or head coach for about 17 years, so it would be a little different for him in terms of how he runs his team. But still, despite that, there's no expectation that he's going to be the guy from what we hear.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, man, it's not like Monken is some bad coach. And
right.
If I was an ACC school and like a middle of the pack looking for a coach who can maybe give me a little different edge, I'm not sure that I think that's a terrible idea if I was an ACC school. Especially the pitch of, bring in a high quality DC pro style on offense, but some of the sort of philosophical and physical hallmarks of what Monken has done at Army. Maybe at a different place that's very attractive. Now, you would just worry about that at South Carolina because of the recruiting aspect and the fact that you are going into these absolute recruiting battles to land top guys. And you're going to need a staff. You're going to need coaches who have been through those and understand those, in order to compete here, I think. So that would be a huge worry. You instantly would probably get hammered by schools saying, I don't care if he's saying pro style. He's been running the triple. I mean, these SEC recruiters they'll latch on to anything.
Yep.
And hammer you for it. So as many of those things as you can remove, not that there's any perfect candidate. There is no perfect candidate. This is all a crapshoot, is the unfortunate, cold, hard truth. But that would be a lot to carry into a new hire as far as giving your opponents some really, really big, high caliber ammo, I would say.
And they already have enough ammo, I mean, that's something you got to consider. I mean, you mentioned the hard truth of coaching hires being a crapshoot in almost every circumstance, or really all of them, honestly. That's another one for South Carolina, in that they're not a logo school with this rich tradition and a huge trophy case. They've made strides in some key areas that they needed to catch up in, facilities, for instance. The fan support's obviously really good. The administration spends money on football. You don't have one of these administrations that's super cheap and won't give coaches any resources to go try to win. They have a lot of those things, but it does hurt when, you don't have that tradition. And so when you got schools like Georgia, Florida, Auburn, now Clemson, Tennessee, even they're down. They've got a lot of tradition. And so these are the schools that you have to go beat for recruits a lot of times, head to head. sometimes a bunch of them at once to go out and win. And so it's already difficult enough. It's not an excuse. It's just reality. It's difficult enough to recruit under those circumstances. You don't need to keep adding things. And so whether you're talking about a Monken or you're talking to a guy like Hugh Freeze, who we talked about a few minutes ago, you have to consider the recruiting angle. What are you going to get hammered on in recruiting? And so with each of those guys, there's some different things there that you can see that can make life difficult on the trail. And the reality is we can talk about coaches, X's and O's, development, culture until we're blue in the face. But in the SEC, I'm going to sound like a coach in this league. If you don't have good players, you are not going to win. Not consistently. You're not going to win a championship. The things that Gamecock fans aspire to. So a huge part of this thing is going to be who can come in here and recruit. And that's behind the scenes too, been a lot of the conversation. There are a bunch of different pieces of this thing, and that makes it difficult, but recruiting is a big, big part of it.
No doubt. So, all right, Chris, before we move on and forget, you want to tell the folks about our friends at Dead Soxy?
Yeah. So, Wes Mitchell group activity. Don't leave now, but as soon as you log off or stop, if you're listening on the pod, as soon as you stop listening, I want you to go to deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com. Super awesome, custom, soft, no-show, dress, socks with patented non-slip technology. Wes and I both have a lot of the Dead Soxy product and really enjoying those. So whether you want to go more casual with the no-shows, whether you want to go with the boardroom line of dress socks, go check those guys out. And for a limited time, Black Friday week sale, use the promo code SPUR, that's SPUR, to buy one, get one free on Dead Soxy products. So you pick one, put it in your cart, pick another of equal or lesser value, you will get that one free. And pro tip, you can use that code as many times as you want. So if you're on the stream, there you see it, deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com, and your code for buy one, get one free is SPUR, SPUR. So once you log off here, once we finish up the show, make sure you go over and check those guys out. We appreciate their support, and we appreciate you supporting them.
We also hope you'll come support us on GamecockCentral.com. Love to see. I know a lot of you have already come over. I see the names. Sort of slowly rolling over to GC. But ultimately, we want everybody on Gamecock Central to watch and listen to the show. But we want everybody that's watching or listening to the show to also be on Gamecock Central. So we'd love to see you over there at GC. And also, we have a special code for that right now. Gamecocks will get you 50% off annual subscription. And also, another code we're not really putting out there, but we'll give you guys here on the podcast / live show. GC Pod will get you 30-day free trial. That's GC Pod 30-day free trial is our official and exclusive podcast code to get you a little free time there on the site if you are a new subscriber. So, all right, before we get back to the actual game a little bit, Chris, is there anything else? Any other thoughts you have on coaching search right now, or are we just going to make everybody wait until we do an update tonight?
I think it'd be more fun to make everybody wait on the update. Gathering some information, like you said, we're both working the phones, going to continue that right after we log off here, and hopefully we'll have some good stuff later this afternoon or this evening.
Yep, so keep an eye on that. We'll, of course, have it on our front page. We'll tweet it out, and all of our social media stuff. You'll see it. You'll find it. But be on the lookout for that at some point tonight. So, Chris, I don't know how much of Georgia you've been able to watch this year. I've watched them a little bit. JT Daniel, it seems like, and I'll be honest, I haven't seen him a lot, but it seems like based on what the players have said, what Bobo has said, and some things I've seen just around the internet, some other media stuff, some stories that with JT Daniel, it has maybe increased their ability to throw the ball around a little bit, maybe get the ball down the field vertically a little bit more. Now they're facing a Mississippi State team that obviously has not been great. has really not been great on either side of the ball. But it does kind of sound like that he has brought a little bit different element to their offense.
Yeah, he's a guy that was, JT Daniels was a highly regarded guy when he got to Southern Cal, of course, transferred to Georgia. And there was a lot of wondering of, man, if this kid's so good, why is he not playing, yet after he transferred? And so a lot of people have said, even though he was cleared medically, which was a question coming into the year, then he needed more time to get fully healthy. And so did get his shot last week and definitely did a good job. I mean, made some big throws, made some plays through the air, seemed to inject some energy into that team. And I mean, that makes it an even more difficult proposition for the Gamecocks because we knew Georgia. I mean, you always think of their identity for years and years as a team that can, run the football, but also a team that can be balanced, and a lot of times this year they've relied too much on the pass. Georgia had not been as successful, or they've just done more of their damage when they have been successful on the ground. Mike Bobo pointed out today that JT Daniels is going to give them the ability to become more balanced offensively. They've got, Jermaine Burton's done a really good job for them at receiver, another big-time recruit from their last class. So they have some guys at wideout that can hurt you, at tight end that can hurt you. The JT Daniels can make some throws, gives them another added element there to go with that run game that, can give you some difficulties in a really, really fast and talented defense.
Yeah, that's where I was about to go with it. Dude, these guys, whether they're up or down on offense with Kirby and maybe there's some in-game decisions that people who are Georgia fans question at times with Kirby. It seems like, regardless of all that, these guys always have a really big, strong, fast defense. And I thought it was intriguing that, Bobo was saying today that they actually play quite a bit of two high safeties, which to me, you don't see near as much of in this league. Not everybody, but for the most part, to me, it feels like this is such a league traditionally based on stopping the run that even if you're facing a team with a good passing attack, stopping the run is first, second, and third priority. And you see that extra safety in the box. So what happens anytime, you have extra safety in the box, that means you're in a single high safety look. You're sort of saying we're going to stop the run, but it does, depending on what coverage you play out of that single high look, it does open up maybe some other things potentially in the passing game, whether it's underneath or over the top, depending on the coverage. Well, Georgia, I guess, is so good up front, both defensive line and linebackers, they feel that they don't need that safety in the box. So then they play too high, which gives them all this freedom and ability to do different things in the passing game as far as pass coverage, having an extra defender drop back in the passing game. So to me, if you're South Carolina, you're looking at that. For one, this is a horrible matchup, y'all. It has the potential to be ugly. There's no Shi Smith. To me, Chris, Georgia is one of those defenses. If you don't have guys that can keep them honest, they will just squeeze the life out of other offenses. That may be what happens on Saturday. But the first key, as it is for South Carolina every week, is going to be able to run the football and force Georgia to at least respect your run enough that they have to get out of those too high looks and bring that extra defender down into the box. Then you got to prove you can complete passes on them, which who knows if you can do that. But to me, that's the big deal there.
It is. And, we've seen, even with all this talent Georgia has, we saw Florida light them up, but it's not a fair comparison. South Carolina does not have the level of skill players that Florida does. Florida lit them up with a lot of, wheel route stuff. They really did a good job of involving the running backs in the passing game. And so Mike Bobo, he was sort of joking this week when he said, look, I'm trying to watch tape, try to figure out how we're going to get a first down, and sort of joking, but really, that's what you've got to look at with no Shi Smith. with the limitations that South Carolina already had in terms of receivers, he's really going to have to get creative, to find ways to, get Kevin Harris the football and Deshaun Fenwick, whether it's in the run game and the pass game. How can you involve some receivers? Can you get them the ball in space a little bit? Can you find ways to scheme them open a little bit more? Can you involve Nick Muse? I mean, these are going to be the questions that they've got to answer. And it is a really, really difficult proposition because Georgia's going to challenge South Carolina, come beat us one-on-one. They don't have a lot of guys in the passing game, South Carolina doesn't, that can give you that man-beating potential, right? And so that puts even more pressure on the run game, which Georgia, it's going to be tough to run on them anyway, but they're going to be able to load up and dedicate even more personnel to that.
So quarterback situation going into Saturday, as we talked about earlier, Bobo says they know, but they're not announcing. I know it's easy to come out of Saturday and say Doty sparked the offense. You should definitely start Doty. I can see both sides of this argument. I think I think big picture, playing Doty as much as possible the final 2 games and getting him reps is important. Chris, I also think just sending him out there to the Wolves, and if he's just going to get beat up for 3 hours on Saturday and get hit and knocked around and not have any chance to be successful and potentially ruining the confidence in your young player, I think that's a consideration for me as well. So if you're making this decision, is it just let Doty go play? Or are you going to say, okay, start Colin Hill. He's got the experience. He knows all the intricacies of this offense. Let's start Colin Hill and then introduce Doty into the game without quite as much pressure as being the starter.
Just me, I would play Doty. I mean, that's just me, just because I think, it's almost a what do you have to lose type thing. And with so many playmakers out, well, really, I mean, Shi Smith, look, call it like it is. I mean, Shi Smith and Kevin Harris have been the 2 bell cow playmakers for this team. There have been some others that have shown some good things, whether it's a Fenwick or a Nick Muse. But Doty's a guy who can make plays at the quarterback position. And so when you assess it, and if you're trying to figure out how are we going to get a first down or how can we put some points on the board, that is a way by playing Luke Doty. Is he going to give you as much, knowledge? Is he going to give you maybe as much of a steady hand in terms of run checks and being able to audible and things like that? Probably not, because of the experience level. He doesn't have a lot, but he probably makes up for that in just his ability to improvise, to run. We saw flashes of that against Missouri, and nobody's saying it's going to be a gigantic difference when you play Luke Doty. We should expect South Carolina to start lighting up the scoreboard. But I do think he gives you a better chance to move the ball in offense because Georgia is so fast, because South Carolina's had some issues this year, losing some pass rush situations, whether it's for a variety of reasons, people running the wrong routes, Colin Hill not stepping up, one-on-one losses for the O-line or tight ends. But I think just putting all of it into that equation, Doty makes probably more sense to me at this point in the season, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we'll see. I think I lean the other way, but I like I said, I can go either way on that. I'm starting Doty regardless against Kentucky. This may be the completely wrong way to look at it, but I also there's part of me that says I don't want my freshman out there just getting smashed for if I've watched because coaches know, man, they have a pretty good feel. Are we going to be able to compete on Saturday or not? It may not be the popular decision, but I think there is a case to be made for just trotting Hill out there again and then getting Doty in there in spurts. But we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do. Obviously, like I said, you can make a case for either side, and I'll go with you either way. So let's throw a couple more little shout-outs, little game balls to people, man. Somebody mentioned Trey Adkins on this thing. Trey Adkins got to speak to the media today. There were some dudes from Saturday that I think if you're going to be positive, stepped up considering all things around him. Trey Atkins made some plays last year, dude. Caught a couple of balls against App State. Had a nice catch against A&M. His best catch, I think, Saturday was taken out by a holding call, but still just showed an ability to go get the football. Man, Chris, I'm not so sure this Trey Atkins cat shouldn't have been on the field at some point earlier this year because he got open and he caught the football. From what I understand, he's been great as far as the scout team all year long. One of these guys that just shows up to work, does what he's supposed to do, and catches the football. With all the problems at receiver, dude, I'm not so sure he shouldn't have been on the field earlier.
Yeah, and he got to play last year when the injury bug really hit the receiving core. Remember the game against Texas A&M? He had an outstanding catch, so he's shown a little bit of a knack, and you're right, man. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of why he has not played so far, but at this point, again, they played some different guys. Josh Vann continues to every now and then show some flashes. Just hasn't been apparently consistent enough in terms of getting open and making plays. But they've trotted out Rico Powers, some a freshman, Jakari Caldwell, some guys that have a chance to be good players, but at this point, have not made a significant impact. So if you're searching for some guys that maybe you can count on, maybe Trey Atkins is somebody you can put out there and try to see if he can make some things happen for you. He certainly showed some. He proved his mettle, I think, a little bit on Saturday night. So it'd be interesting to see if he gets more opportunities.
Yep, and I think dude was shy, more than likely out.
Yeah,
shoot, he may draw a start. We'll see. We'll see if the carry on is good to go or not. Bill asked where is Atkins from. He is a walk on from Hillcrest High, right? He went to Hillcrest. Right. Had a big senior year, and really wasn't didn't have a big career before that, but had a big senior year. As he said today, Perry Orth helped get him in touch with the right people, and then walks on, and the rest is history. On defense, Chris, I'm giving my shout out to Cam Smith because the way the season started for Cam, the play on special teams with the ball bounced off of him, he's gotten beat on a few plays otherwise. To go out there with no JC, no Izzy, no RJ obviously at safety, and then did he get beat on a couple of plays as well? That's going to happen at cornerback, but to get his head around there and make that interception and just sort of battle it out, I think Cam showed some mettle, and we've always known that Cam, I think, has had some developing to do, but that Cam has a high upside and is a talented dude. So I think that should be a positive sign for South Carolina fans from Cam.
Yeah, and I think it was almost unfair how he had a lot of expectations on him because of recruiting. Some of the expectations are maybe too high. We tried to temper that and say, look, Cam has physical tools, right? But he needs a little time. And so played just a little bit last year, and this year, early on, obviously had the moments against Tennessee, like you mentioned, Wes, but he's a guy where you can see that he has that ability. He's been close on a couple plays that just haven't gone his way. And I'll tell you, if you're a defensive back playing against receivers at a high level, you're going to get beat sometimes. It's just the reality of the situation, especially on some close 50-50 plays. And that doesn't mean it's a good thing, right? But every DB gets beat. It's about how do you respond. And so I think he responded well the other night by playing that ball really well. Connor Bazelak, Missouri quarterback, throws it up. He intercepted it. And so I do think we've seen, and for what we've heard, that he's made some progression. He just needs some time. And I do think you see, though, that he's got the raw tools to where he could develop into a quality player for South Carolina.
No doubt. All right, I think that's going to do it for today. Chris, we didn't go into specifics about the game day chair. So do you want to tell everybody about the game day chair and how they can get a game day chair? And I don't know, man, if they're going to have one for Thanksgiving, they need to get on that, because I know if you're going to watch some football on Thanksgiving, sort of crash after loading up on, tryptophan that's in turkey. if you're going to load up on turkey and have to pass out watching football Thursday night, you need to get on it and get a game day chair.
You do. So call those guys, 803-926-1493, the game day chair. Perfect for football watching, for a nap, after your maybe your afternoon turkey sandwich like I do. Check out the game day chair, affordablemedicalusa.com or 803-926-1493. Awesome addition to your living room, to your man cave. Variety of just push button positions that you can get to instantly. Super comfortable, super roomy. So make sure you check those guys out at affordablemedicalusa.com.
Yeah, appreciate it. Bill says his back is killing him. Bill, go get you a game day chair, man. You will not regret it. Somebody asked, is Birch hurt? Birch is, yes, I don't know what it is, but he is questionable for Saturday, according to Mike Bobo. We'll see y'all tomorrow, and I'm going to try to get Colin Taylor on because it's the start of basketball season. So we'll talk about that. Probably, what do you say, Chris? No show on Thursday.
Right.
No Thanksgiving show. And then Friday, maybe we'll get a dog on to talk about the Bulldogs. So, all right, y'all. You got anything else, Chris?
Nah, man. I muted myself again. I went through the whole show, and then I did it, click the button for some reason. We're good.
All right. He's Chris. I'm Wes. Appreciate the support as always. See y'all on Wednesday. Have a good one.